Spoilers ahead for Final Fantasy XIV's Heavensward expansion ahead.
You've been warned.
So what are your thoughts on Heavensward? Being a veteran of the game and having played it a long time ago in the ancient days of yore.
Yes, the ancient days of tactical points and other, unnecessary things overall. But the game back then was a very different feel. Like, I played Heavensward when it was not current, but I was in Stormblood still, so it was definitely a little different of an experience overall. It's probably similar to what I'd say many people have felt, after coming out of ARR, where in the beginning it's that slog, it's like that slower paced world building foundation that, well, Heavensward and everything else builds upon. When you finally get out of that hell in Ul'dah, the bloody banquet, all that stuff happens. You're seeing all of your comrades throughout the entire story just gone, and you get this.
And Haurchefant is there to give you a nice, warm, hot cocoa.
Yeah, that light in the darkness. You show up there, he finally has a chance to repay you for all you've done, and you start off. You walk through the gates of judgment. Past the Ark of the Worthy into the foundation itself, into Ishgard, and you hear the music swell, and you really get this feel that you're not safe again, but you have like a new place, you have like a new home, you got new people to work with, and it's a great feeling to finally come from what was literally a disaster and a sad mood to a little bit of hope again, a little bit of warmth. And the storytelling, the music, it all just completely reaches like such a great rising action off the coattails of Realm Reborn. I was really, really happy with how it just turned out from just, this okay stuff in the beginning where nothing was like really completely connected, but, A Realm Reborn came off of the ruin of 1.0, so there's only so much they could do. You could see how it got better towards the end, and then when they finally had their bearing, and brought Heavensward out, you really get that feel that you do like the quest lines, you get really connected with characters, the voice acting is so much better, and the believable moments and the music that sets the tone, you really feel like you're in this world and you're with your comrades, tried and true, and then you finally get to the vault. Everyone, when they finally get to the vault, and you think you're finally about to maybe apprehend the Archbishop from his evil plan of becoming this big bad primal and stuff. He's trying to get to Isis La, this is the mysterious Isis La, and then Sir Zephyrin chucks a light javelin.
That motherfucker.
And Haurchefant takes it for you, saves you, and then whether you're super connected with the story or not, here's this man who, when all else was against you, he took you in, he smiled, tried to help you, and you really got that emotion that just hit you as hard as it did. Yeah. And everyone feels sad, everyone gets like teary-eyed, like it's
apparently
rough.
not, because I think I mentioned this before, but in the comments of my video reacting to that moment, people were like, actually at this moment I didn't feel a thing. It was the next scene where you told the dad that it hurt. But I didn't feel anything when Haurchefant died. I'm like, you soulless, icy-hearted bastards.
I mean, come on, this man, like, he did so much for you. I mean, like whether you like really care for the story or not, like, this is a guy who like gave everything for you because he knew what you could do for Ishgard. He saw what you could do. Like, you're the hero, and he even like described you to his father as hope incarnate. And even though Sir Fortan himself, he was like, come on, Haurchefant, you're being a little overzealous, you're being a little exaggerative here. But no, Edmund, you realize, no, it's true, you're really something special. And of course, that makes sense as well. When he says, my son, in that sad tone and drops crying, that does hit you, especially if
Oh yeah, it's like a
in
cold.
The context of
it's like a cold dagger to the soul.
Yeah, like you never want to think of a father or a mother like thinking that they've lost their child. It's like that context is rough.
It's one of those things that I think everybody feels is kind of not unilaterally, but universally unnatural. Is like
bad and like should never happen.
Yeah, a parent should never outlive their child. It's by nature unnatural. So it's so cold and chilling to anybody.
It's very heartbreaking to think. And you know, when you finally get off that, and you know, again, this game is a great way of just kind of orchestrating like the mood entirely. You know, you have moments where you're happy, where you're mad, where you're sad, and you go off that into like this. All right, now I'm ready. I'm going to resolve this. You know, like this is it. And I'm going to Isisla. I'm going to go in there and finish off everything. You know, screw the Knights 12. Screw the Archbishop. I'm going to head into Isisla and defeat them for Ishgard, for Haurchefant, for then Yazael, who ended up sacrificing herself to get us there in one piece. You know, all this stuff, it like kind of gets you like in every mood, like playing you like an instrument, but it's all so well done between every element, from the visuals, the voice acting, the music, the scenery, the cinematography. It's all there for just like a nice experience. And you know, when you see him on his knees, or hell, when you're in the middle of the fight, right, when he says, "You survived my divine reckoning," and he goes from, you know, attacking you to like stumbling around and, you know, haphazardly swinging a sword and like panting. You know, you see like this guy who called him a god who would excise all, and now he's just all, you know, screwed up like he's drunk because you defeated him. I mean, this man literally became a primal, and you know, that's your job, is to slay them. And here you go, once
primal
again.
Whack-a-mole of the Warrior of Light.
Yes, exactly. And there's another one, you know, another notch. And he drops and he's like, you know, what are you? And he has like this look of terror and just fills you like this, like, yeah, that's right.
Actually, a random thought, because I can't help myself. Wouldn't the perfect meme be when he says, "What are you?" Someone just superimposes that moment from X-Men. I'm the Juggernaut, bitch!
I mean, technically, that's what you are. Like,
hot crowd, hot crowd.
You've basically been just the guy who deletes primals everywhere. It's just your job. It's what you're known for, as the Warrior of Light. You're giving a blessing to do that job and more. So, yeah, it's like you then get that satisfaction, but then again, it immediately pulls you out of it, because then, you know, Justinian gets turned into Nidhogg and flies off. So
yeah,
now you're left with like one half pride and like, you know, resolve, and one half, oh god, this isn't over.
It's like, oh god, there's more. Yay, there's more. No, there's more. Yay, there's more. No, there's more.
Exactly. Yay, no. And that's what I really liked about Heavensward the entire way through, is like, it's a mix of experiences, right? Like, you see, when you're going through, say, the Western Highlands for the first time, and, you know, if, say, you were like a 1.0 player, and you saw the green, lush life of that area before the calamity, you know, it's probably somewhat even more impactful when you're in it now, and it's just completely covered in snow and ice, and you can see the wrecks of battle. You can see spears impaled in dead dragons, and just the wreckage. And you do the Dusk Vigil, and you go through there, and you can see like what was once another fortress against the Dravanian horde that's now been completely fallen and, you know, overtaken by the elements.
Desecrated.
And in 1.0, part of the Conjure quest line, you meet a particular Lord Commander of Temple Knights called Sir Ul'dah, and the second boss is Sir Ul'dah, all corrupted and angry as a vengeful spirit, because the lore behind that dungeon is very, very dark. Like, there's a couple dark storylines, like before even Shadowbringers, that are really screwed up. One of them here is the Dusk Vigil, where, you know, you go and speak to that NPC who, you know, you do it because it's a blue quest. You know, I want to fly here, damn it. So you speak to the guy, and he makes you do an optional dungeon for it. So, you know, you just do it. But, you know, the mood there plays like, you know, that even more somber version of the Western Highlands theme, which is already sad.
When I did that blue quest, I actually paid attention to it, and yeah, you're right. You're going into essentially a haunted, abandoned fortress that was assaulted and desecrated by the Dravanians.
Yeah. Did you ever read the notes in there? Because there are like journal pages.
I tried to, but the party I was running with really wanted to rush through, so I'll probably,
It
when
sucks.
I'm high enough level, I'll probably just go in there unsynced and just read
That's what I
them
do a
properly.
lot.
I
For instance,
foresee myself doing that
like,
a lot in the future.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. They're what they're doing is adding explorer mode, real quick, and you can just like choose it from the duty finder. It's like some dungeons like from Stormblood, I think now, but most of us Shadowbringers they implemented it where everyone's dead, all the bosses are gone. You can just go in there, and you can just walk around and like change jobs and stuff, and you can just take pictures and go through it.
Peruse.
So that's probably what it's for. But so what happened was, Sir Gilhemric had a really beautiful wife, and they are said to be wed. Like they were engaged, they're said to be wed. But a inquisitor, a high-ranking inquisitor of the Holy See, really coveted his wife, and was really mad that that Sir Gilhemric had her instead of him. So a little bit of manipulation, use of his power, misuse of his power rather. He had her branded as a heretic and had her taken away and jailed. And Sir Gilhemric, was like, what the hell are you doing? What? So he tried to fight this, but he's a Lord Commander, but this guy's a high-ranking Inquisitor of the Holy See, so he stands over him even. And even he tried so hard to, get her out, but well, let's just say it wasn't in time. She was broken. She was completely changed from her experiences there. It was a lot of really bad stuff that happened to her. The Inquisitor had his way with her and everything. It was rough. And Solier Hemric was still stationed at the Dusk Vigil, back when it was still the Dusk Vigil. It was still there. It was still under the garrison's employ and everything. And there's a statue being commissioned with a particular jewel that was the same gemstone as the ring that his wife had, embedded in the forehead of Halone, the patron deity of Ishgard. So in the same goddamn place that Yelhamric commanded was a statue of Halone with his wife's gem, and he couldn't take it because defacing a monument of the Holy See is punishable. It's considered treason. So he just couldn't leave it. After everything that happened to her and everything that happened to him, he couldn't leave it. So when the snows came from the calamity, he stayed, and he stayed, and he stayed. And his men begged him to leave. And he said, no, I'm not going anywhere. And so over time, the snow started to, really break through, and like the wall started to crumble, the cold came in, and he stayed, and he stayed. And some of the men started dying and, started cannibalizing, because he just wouldn't leave. And he ended up dying to the cold, frozen snows and the ruins of that vigil as a vengeful spirit and that second boss. And what you're doing is, after you get through him and you defeat the Griffin at the end, you take that jewel back. And you give it to a, person in the family of Solier Hemric, so he can get closure. And you go through all of that, and that's just a side dungeon. And that's what I really like about Heavensward, is all this stuff is so rich with connections to the story, compared to like
I find all of it. I find all of it is super. It's not just super dark, but it's the willingness to tell these really serious, deep, and thought-provoking stories that I'm not used to in being a WoW veteran. We don't really get many, like old school WoW. Maybe you had some of the jewel quests out in like Dusk Haven, for example, where it would go into some dark stories and stuff like that. But here in FF, you can run into them not just in Ishgard, but you can run into them in Ul'dah, you can run into them in Limsa Lominsa, you can run into them in Gridania, and it's not just MSQs, but also side quests have these like really deep, dark,
definitely, dude,
and impactful stories, especially if you pay attention even remotely. And it's not even necessarily like they're all dark or they're all depressing. Some are actually kind of funny and uplifting.
They're just very detailed and very well written.
Yeah, like you can tell that everything written in this, from A Realm Reborn, and in particular in Heavensward so far, from what I've experienced, is written with passions. Like people are not sitting there and writing this just as a job. This is a passion. This is something that they're actually giving time to, and that they're putting their all into it. And I think that's some of the most rewarding and beautiful aspects about Final Fantasy that honestly I think if you only play this MMO, or if you may majorly play this MMO and don't play others like it, you can take for granted pretty easily just how fantastic the storytelling is, because it's one thing to even have it, because most MMOs, especially some of the newer ones that have come out lately, just virtually don't have any. They don't even bother with it. Here, it's some of the most integral, passionate, and enjoyable experiences that Final Fantasy provides. So I've enjoyed every single minute of it.
Yeah, it's as Yoshi P said, this is a Final Fantasy game first and an MMO second.
Yeah, and you can really tell that's at the core of the development process, and I think that's what's going to serve the game in the long run.
Yeah, it's what's been keeping it going so far, man. It just keeps going, like, on like an upward, never-ending, up into the clouds ramp of just, it's getting more and more, story-driven, and it's getting more and more climactic, but along the way, the storytelling is just getting so much better and so much deeper as you go, because this game references itself a lot. The continuity in this game is insane. Like, for instance, on a minor point, when you get the Mammoth core for your Magitech armor in Realm Reborn?
Yeah.
If you had, say, spoken with Serendipity before, and done your level 50 Goldsmith quest and everything, she says hi to you by name and warmly, and references some of your, antics when you were learning the craft and everything, and then asks you what you're here for, and that being the Mammoth core.
Yeah, that's another thing, like, a small experience differences like that provide such a life to the world. Like, you actually, like, your decision to let's say go play level Goldsmith, like you just said, if you had not chosen to do that, you would not have had that interaction. Yep, but because you did, you're rewarded for it. You're rewarded for it. And same with if you'd played Dragoon and you had spoken and you had gone through that quest line. I'm sure I didn't get to experience it, unfortunately, but you would have had different interactions with Astinian and other characters there as well.
You could rewatch cutscenes, and you could see them, because they'll add that flavor text now because you did it.
Yeah, it's the upside with New Game Plus. There's replayability in an MMO. I want to stress that there's replayability
in an MMO.
In an MMORPG, like, there's a point to going back and playing and re-experiencing moments in an MMORPG. There really isn't that in WoW. The only reason you would go back and do something is if you didn't do it the first time. If you did it the first time, if you already had done it and you'd already grinded out anything that it's worth it in old school content like WoW, that's it. Like, there's no point in going back.
Yeah, but the New Game Plus, and that's that was a relatively new feature too, which is great, because for instance, like, if you do Binding Coils of Bahamut, that gets referenced in some Heavensward stuff and post Heavensward stuff and onwards. Stuff like that. It's like, if you do certain quest lines, like, for instance, the Crystal Tower originally, when Shadowbringers came out, it was just like side content that if you didn't do, you'd miss out on some flavor text and some really big connections. But now it's mandatory from 5.3 onwards. They made it mandatory.
Yeah, I know. I had to do it.
Yeah, and like, it's a great storyline,
Yeah, I don't regret doing it either. I almost appreciate it being mandatory, because instead of trying to rush through Rumble, which I haven't rushed anything, but instead of like focusing on the MSQ, I had more reason to do that side stuff and to do some raiding, which I appreciate, because it's a good incentive. It's a very strong incentive to get people to at least try the raiding experience in FF, which I think is a good way to do it. Like, I mean, some people might be annoyed, like, oh, I have to do this. Like, why do I have to do this? Like, that this should be optional. I feel like if you make too many things overly optional, there will be a lot of people who never get a chance solely because they never have to. So if you can at least give them that, like, that taste of, like, that type of gameplay, like, at least, like, try the raiding, and you go through the Crystal Tower and you end up deciding afterwards that you never want to raid again, that the raiding experience here in FF, you don't, as far as I'm aware, in the future expansions, there's no other mandatory raids. As far as I'm aware.
The Crystal Tower is really the only one, because there's so much, like, focus on it in Shadowbringers, so that's why they made it mandatory. It's like you get a lot out of it. Originally, it was just an optional, and you can miss out on stuff, but now it's, like, really good. Like, and it's it's like baby's first Alliance raid, so, onwards, it's great. And then what I like is how it kind of introduces you to the other stuff, part of the MSQ, right? Once you do Heavensward, Then you get Alexander, that cutscene shows and stuff, and it makes you want to go back to the Eagleshire and be like, yo, what the hell's happening here? And then it unlocks that amazing side story and everything. You do that, and then that gets referenced later and stuff like that. It's like this whole thing. It just constantly references itself to just create this natural world. And again, A Realm Reborn was this foundation that was then built upon by Heavensward, that then took everything from A Realm Reborn and helped it grow. And then Stormblood built upon that, and now Heavensward is on that. And now you have Endwalker that's gonna tie it all up in a bow and finish it all off, and then moving on to something new. And it's amazing to think that, when I first started, when I first went through Heavensward, it's like it was like so special going through this kind of storyline, because for the same reasons you and anyone else does, you get this mix of emotions and connections with characters, and now you see like how far it's come when you look back at every expansion, and it kind of makes you feel nostalgic in a way, and it's crazy. Even if even nostalgic when you've just beaten Shadowbringers or so, and it's been maybe a few months. And you're like, man, remember that time in Heavensward?
It's like, that's a lifetime ago. Whew.
Yeah, exactly. And it's only been like a few months, and it's like that kind of stuff is like amazing to me. Especially when you like listen to like certain themes, all right, certain music, or you do a you queue up for a duty relay, and you get like like Dusk Vigil or something again. And it's like, oh no, not this place, this sad place.
The depression is back.
This game is just this amazing way of just instilling this sense of like, this is the world of Eorzea. Here's everything you've done in it. Here's what you've done before, and here's what you're looking forward to. And it's a great way of world building, of how the story just ropes you in and just sprinkles the MMO bits every here and there that allows you to experience it, but in a nice connected way.
Now, there is actually one thing that I've kind of been thinking about, and when I get around to doing the review, for my review of Heavensward, one thing I'm thinking about bringing up, and I may not, because I don't want to give the wrong impression, but you remember Realm Reborn patch 2.55, that's where the Sultana was poisoned, air quotes, and killed.
Yes.
In Heavensward, that storyline, this is my opinion, but to me, it came off that the writers bit off more than they could chew, and didn't want to go all the way with that, because they kind of undid a lot of that consequence, because the Sultana wasn't actually poisoned and killed. Raban was imprisoned, but we very quickly freed him, and the Crystal Braves ran away. We even technically got some of the Crystal Braves back, as in a small way. The Rising Stones is returned to us. Really, the only remaining consequence from that is our requirement to having fled to Ishgard, and also the Scions being gone. Other than that, however, everything else kind of was undone. Everything else, I should say, that would have resulted in something that could have been its own expansion worth of a storyline and complication and Game of Thrones style writing, with Ul'dah falling to Lolorito and the Syndicate and the Monetarists, and Ul'dah becoming even necessarily, narratively speaking, a hostile territory for the player. I think all of that, to me, it came off with what they did with a lot of that undoing of that story. To me, it came off like the writers were like, oh crap, we set this up, but we want to focus on the story with Ishgard, we want to focus on the Dravanian story, we want to introduce Aziz La, we want to set the tone for these other stories we already have planned, and this side story in itself isn't really necessarily a side story. It's so big, like Ul'dah falling to the Monetarists and becoming, and could possibly even breed into a civil war. Like, that is such a big storyline that to relegate it to a side story would do a disservice. So they had from my perspective, not knowing what happened in the background with the rating team, to me it came off like they had that crossroads where they like, okay, we either make its own dedicated expansion to the potential civil war in Ul'dah, Raban leading the rebellion against the Monetarists using the Brass Blades to fight back, and us, the Warrior of Light, doing our best to aid in bringing unity and reunification back to Ul'dah, and solving this huge problem, and finally putting Nanamo to rest in the right way in her memory, and then creating a new republic for Ul'dah. to me, that was what they set up at the end of patch 2.55, and in Heavensward, they undid it in not very fast and not in an unnatural way. Like, I felt like they resolved it quickly and absolutely in air quotes, but in an efficient but appropriate way, but in a way that still came off to me like they were trying to correct or course correct a mistake. Like, it got wrapped up too quickly, and in my opinion, in too solid of a way. Like, I guess it really comes down to, I don't believe that their original plan, especially how narratively 2.55 played out, to me, it didn't come off like the Sultana was, like, the animations they gave her of her choking and desperately reaching out to you for life, like, that didn't come off to me like she was put in a comatose sleep. That told me she was choking to death, and when she fell, her throat had swollen up and she died. Like,
Yeah, like the potent sleeping potion kind of thing.
Yeah, like, for me, that's one narrative, not whole, because again, they still resolved it in a way that I felt was appropriate and the best way they could have.
This whole thing that it was like a usurped scheme, right? Like, it was like not meant to be this way, because it was originally Telegi's whole thing, and it was like kind of like a counterplay. Like, it is satisfying. I think the issue comes in the fact that they already set up like the main storyline, and then they had to resolve other stuff before, say, Stormblood.
Yeah.
And I think you'll find a little bit more closure and stuff in the other patches leading up to Stormblood, the post Heavensward stuff.
Well, like I said, it's not even really. This is where what I'm afraid. Like,
I know what you mean. I know what you mean, definitely. Like, because like I did honestly feel a bit weird, like how quickly everything got cleaned up with Ul'dah, because that's like literally the ending point of ARR, and I'm like, damn. Like, I really felt kind of like, where do we go from here? That's why that whole mood when you're walking on the steps of faith. Like, what's gonna happen now? And I think it really they were just kind of pressed for trying to resolve everything in time. And
yeah, and again, I don't know what happened in the background. Maybe their plan originally was to resolve it the way that they did, and it was a gotcha. I'm not sure, but I no matter what, I don't see what happened as a negative. I do kind of have like that, that what if, like, oh, what if they had gone all the way and made it like a full-blown civil war in Ul'dah, and Monitorists v Rebels, with Roban leading the Rebels and Lolorito leading the Monitorists. Like, it's something, that storyline that they could have potentially done with that would have been so epic. And again, it just comes off unnatural to me, that the way they decided to wrap it up. And it's unfortunate,
it was very quick.
But I don't feel like they did a disservice. I don't think the way they wrapped it up hurt anything. It's just more like they didn't take the full potential of it that they set up. And I think that came down to probably budget. It probably came down to what narratively they wanted to focus on most, and also maybe at that point they were just writing up Stormblood, and they were like, okay, never mind, we actually have this different story in mind that we want to prioritize. And I have no idea, but whatever the case, I don't feel robbed of anything. I don't feel like they were lazy. I don't feel like anything like that. I want to stress that.
Yeah,
but
it's all a masterpiece in the end, with just some minor, because nothing's perfect, and especially Final Fantasy, like, it's got its faults, and its story, it does have its ups and downs quality-wise, but it's just like a nice upward, and a ascent to greatness all the way through. And
absolutely, and even with that factored in, Heavensward, the thing is, nothing was, like I said, nothing was robbed of because of that wrap-up. Because so much love and passion was put into every part of the story in Heavensward, with the
very
Ishgardians.
anticlimactic, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say at most that was probably the most that came to. It was an anticlimactic wrap up to a story that could have been more.
A very big end to A Realm Reborn that really seemed like something.
Yeah, but in the end, I don't think it robs of anything. It was fantastically, and what we got with the Dravanian story and with the Ishgardians and with everything that happened there. Honestly, with how amazing the core Heavensward story is in Ishgard, I think it really, that's another part of it, is that was so good that they probably were like, ah, crap, we have this amazing story.
They forgot about it.
It's like, ah, crap, that's right.
Oh, man.
What do we do about this? So it's just like, we got to wrap it up. And we have one or two paths we can take. We can take make it its own expansion, or we can wrap it up now and write stories down the line that we want to actually have flow out of Heavensward with the Ishgardian story. So it doesn't rob anything. It's still a masterpiece of a story with Heavensward and everything, and they did so well with the Ishgardian Dravanian plot that I don't feel that what happened with Nanamo, Roban, the Crystal Braves, and everything they set up at the end of patch 2.55 took anything away from the overall Heavensward story and experience. I think they just kind of cleaned it up and then refocused on what they actually wanted.
Yeah, very brisk. Just and then, all right, let's move on back to Dragonsong War. But yeah, I think that kind of wraps it up. You know, it's just a great expansion. It's got a lot of stuff to it. There's like just so many memorable moments, so many great improvements from Realm Reborn, and it's just a great expansion overall. That even if like you've just came out of nowhere from a Realm Reborn and you've started playing into Heavensward on the free trial, maybe you've never really played MMOs before, or you've played other ones. Like this is like a completely different experience, especially if you like stories and stuff. It just really hits. It really hits home on the whole. This is the world of Eorzea. And
yeah, I envy and feel bad for anyone who this is their first MMO, because I feel good for them because their first MMO, talk about hitting the ground running with narrative experience. However, what happens when they go to other MMOs? It's like, this is gonna have an awesome story too, right? No.
I feel like it's just like, you know what an MMO is based on like what its strengths are, and you like play it for those strengths. Like I don't play Warframe for its story. I play it because it's fun to destroy stuff with like a giant hammer as a rhino or something.
Yeah, I play Warframe to spread STDs with Nidus.
Oh, that's a good frame. He's overpowered as hell.
Is he still? Like I haven't played in forever, but that.
Yeah.
I mean, let's end this off. I have one question for you. This is the most important question I'll ask you related to FF ever. It's the most important question of all time. Hilda or Azael?
Hilda or Azael, as in like
waifu
choice. Well, if I had to choose between those two, honestly, I'd have to go Hilda.
You are a man of culture.
I'm glad to have found common ground, comrade.
Remember to leave a like and subscribe.